Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Let's now discuss the intricate world of extraditing suspects and explore the distinctions that has with deportation. This comes amid the case of two men arrested in Eswatini for the murder of rapper Kiernan aka Forbes and Tebello Tibz Murders. A number of countries are grappling with international crime or cross-border crime, if you like, and understanding the legal processes involved is paramount. So we'll uncover these complexities and the implications, bring in our guest, international law expert with the University of Johannesburg, Professor Hennie Strydom, who joins us now via our video link. Prof, it's lovely to have you on the SABC News channel. Thanks as always for making time. We don't have to really think too far back to kind of consider a moment where there's been similar circumstances when in the Thabo Bester case, right? Thabo Bester and Nandi Pamakudumana were arrested in another country. They were wanted here at home and it later emerged they were there illegally. What unfolded thereafter was complications apparently in the effort to bring them back home. With that in mind, what are these steps that need to be taken by authorities here in South Africa if they are to get this case right?
Yeah, we have to distinguish between extradition and deportation. Let's start with extradition. It is regulated in terms of bilateral treaties between two or more countries. And it is also regulated in terms of national law. So, and in both cases, there are certain procedures to be followed. In terms of the treaty will specify which kind of crimes will qualify for extradition. And the extradition request is then normally transmitted between the sort of foreign affairs departments. That just in a nutshell, but there is a sort of more comprehensive process that takes place at the national level in terms of national law. For instance, if there is a request received for the extradition of a person, then there must be, first of all, a request for the issue of a warrant of arrest for that person. And that proceedings take place before a magistrate. So the magistrate must verify that the person who has been, after the warrant of arrest has been issued, that is indeed the person the other country wants to have. And secondly, that there is evidence before the court that, valid evidence that the person is sought for the commission of a crime in the requesting country. So that basically are the two processes that will have to be complied with when there is a request for extradition. Yeah. There's a slightly more simple process in the case of extradition between South Africa and SADC countries. It's a more streamlined process which takes place between the law enforcement agencies of the different countries, and the request for extradition does not have to go through the diplomatic channels.
That's interesting and leads very well into my next question. I mean, by virtue of this being a request, it suggests to me as a layman that the request could be turned down, right? I mean, are there instances where a country that holds a suspect turns down this request for an extradition? And if so, what would be the grounds for something like that?
Yeah, that's an important question. You are now talking about the executive part of the proceedings. I have slightly touched on the judicial requirements, but there is an executive part to the proceedings, and that is where a state and the executive power may decide not to effect the extradition of a person. For instance, in the case of human rights considerations. For instance, if a person may face, serious violations of his or her human rights on the other side, a state like South Africa will be under an obligation not to extradite that person for fears of being persecuted, for fears of being falsely accused of crimes, etc. And these are sort of normal considerations that will be taken into account by the executive power of a country in order, if it has to decide whether, in fact, a person should be extradited on the basis of a request received from another country.
The defense in this particular matter, the defense of these two brothers who are in Eswatini, tells us that they're yet to receive a full application for this extradition process to get underway. You'd know more than we do how long typically these things take. I mean, we got told of the arrest already last week. It's almost a week later. Does that sound right to you, that a full application wouldn't have been submitted by now?
Yeah, there's a lot of documentation that need to be submitted, and that could take time in order to bring it, up to standard, in order to facilitate the extradition process. So, and sometimes, it's uncomplicated, but sometimes it can be complicated, especially if there are sort of political issues involved. But I do not have the details on that in that specific case, but generally that may happen.
Speaking about external forces, whether from politics or any other, this is a pretty high-profile matter. And, already in the commentariat, there's been, if you like, skepticism that the only reason why this is being expedited is because of the attention this matter has received. Given all of that, the public nature of the trial itself, do you foresee any kind of complication in the legal proceedings that have to take place?
I don't think so, because the evidence that we have, I think, are pretty solid. And I do not know who is now involved in the extradition proceedings. I do not have the detail of that and from, which country the request is coming and who is this country that has to comply with it. So I think the legal process will be fairly simple. And there may be, as I've said, issues concerning the executive phase. Pardon, but I do not have any information at this point in time on it.
Fair enough. Professor Hennie Strydom, always great getting your insights, sir. Thanks very much indeed for your time. Professor Strydom is an international law expert with the University of Johannesburg.